Welcome back to DCS and the F-16. We're taking a look today at a straight-in approach. I want to combine a couple of ideas here. I've seen a few people do straight-in approaches and get a couple of things wrong, which is going to make this a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers. If you've watched the videos I've done previously on traffic circuits in aircraft like the Cessna 172, I talk a lot about the numbers. You fly by the numbers. And a straight-in approach has a lot in common with that. I'm going to link to a video by, I think it's Tim at Fast Jet Performance, in the description, which I really recommend you look at. The guy knows what he's doing. He did this for a living. To put it in simple terms, 50 miles out, we want to be on centre line at 2,000 feet, 300 knots, 12 miles, extend speed brake, 250 knots, well, 300 is perfectly fine in the F-16, and gear down, and 7 miles out you are fully configured and you begin your descent. Now, how do we know distance? Well, if you see me looking down, I'm looking down at the HSI and the distance. I've entered the TACAN for Nellis, which is 12 X-ray. There is no way to repeat TACAN distance on the hood, so you have to look down at the HSI. Okay, so as we're flying the approach, again, looking down, checking distance. We're looking for that 15 miles centre line, 2,000 feet, 300 knots. Okay, and we're looking at the radar altimeter course. We're looking at height in terms of AGL. It's a little bit difficult to judge it here because obviously we're over kind of mountainous terrain. Okay, so that's the first thing to bear in mind. Think in terms of the numbers. Think in terms of 12 miles, you want to extend your speed brake, and you want your gear down, check 3 greens, and then 7 miles you'll begin your descent. It works out about 8 miles for me in the F-16 because I'm looking for the dashed 2.5 degree pitch line on the runway threshold. If you leave it to 7, you're going to be too high, and then you're going to have to compensate for that. The second thing to bear in mind is between 12 and 7 miles we want to get the aircraft configured. Now, what does that mean? We've got the gear down. We want to trim the aircraft so that the FPM is at the top of the angle of attack bracket. Personally, I use 1 click of nose up pitch to get it there, and then I adjust power. You've got to be patient. The angle of attack bracket, as the airspeed is decreasing, the angle of attack bracket is going to come up to meet the FPM anyway, so you don't need to rush it. As long as the airspeed is coming down, you're fine. The other big tip I would give on this is when you adjust power, you're looking at the fuel flow. You want to make small adjustments. I've set the curve on throttle on thrust to -45, and I might adjust that. But it's a good idea just to fly the aircraft and adjust curves until you've got the fuel flow, especially down low, where you want it to be. You don't want to be making big adjustments. You don't want to be making 200 or 300 pound adjustments. You want 100 pound adjustments, so you can just nudge the throttle. It's almost like air-to-air refueling. Right? You're just making small adjustments, just nudging the throttle just to get that tiny adjustment. Don't be surprised if you're constantly making adjustments, but it's important to get that curve set so that you can make the small adjustments. Here, I'm not touching pitch. All I'm doing is manipulating the aircraft with roll and also with thrust. That's all I'm doing. You can clear the hood, declutter the hood to help with this. As you see, I'm bingo fuel, I'm low on fuel coming in. I deliberately do that to make the aircraft light, just for landing practice. So we're looking for the runway threshold. We've got the FPM marker on the 2.5 degree dashed pitch line. We've got it at the top of the angle of attack bracket, and that's all we need to do at the end. Flaring the aircraft, pulling back on the power, getting the donut on the angle of attack indexer, and then touching down. I find holding the aircraft nose up at that 10 degree pitch line. Much more difficult in DCS than BMS. In BMS it's so much easier. In DCS it's I feel that you have to be in kind of strictly or rigidly within parameters to get it to work right. If you're a little bit off, maybe if your vertical speed is a little bit off, your speed is a little bit off, it doesn't seem to want to do it. You've really got to be precise on your parameters. Okay, so now, and look at the airspeed. The airspeed is absolutely rock solid. It's around 150 knots. Doesn't really change that much. Goes between 149 and 151. This is, I always find this a little bit difficult, lining the aircraft up on centre line on this short final. At this point I should have actually centred track IR, so track IR is a little bit off. If you use track IR, you'll know how that can happen. So I'm trying to line it up on centre line. I don't stick on centre line. On touchdown I slide a little bit off to the right. So it's certainly not a perfect example. So at this point we're just making tiny adjustments on power as needed. Again, look at the speed. Speed is fine. Making tiny adjustments. Just looking to bring back the power. Bring the nose up, looking for that 13 degrees AOA. Just about got it there. Touchdown. Holding the nose up. Bit of a challenge. Again, more so than it is in BMS. Kind of oscillates a little bit. It's really I find it really difficult to hold it. And then about 90 knots. Just bring the nose down. Start to brake. 70 knots. Activate nose wheel steering. And just brake the aircraft. Ready to make the turn off the runway. So, in summary, think about the numbers. The numbers are really important. They will get you to be consistent with your approaches. The worst thing you can do is improvise your approaches, because you will make one mistake after another. The only thing will be that the difference is that the mistakes will tend to have a little bit of variation. So, think about the numbers. Think about your controls. Think about your curves on your throttle, and just keep practicing it. It's the technique. Once you have those, and also trim the aircraft pitch so that the flight path marker is at the top of the angle of attack bracket. Once you do that, it's one less thing to think about as you're flying the approach. So hope you found that useful, and hope you found that helpful in practicing your straight-on approaches. And as always, feel free to like, comment and subscribe.